top story here tonight is about how one NC State student is trying to spread awareness about intestinal pathogenic E. coli strains. Escherichia coli is a common bacteria that many have heard of. It lives within our intestines and helps to break down and digest the foods that we eat. These strains can even benefit the host by producing vitamin K2, which helps prevent blood clotting and prevents colonization of disease-carrying strains. The E. coli living within our gut is expelled through fecal matter and also assists with waste processing. But when pathogenic E. coli strains enter our body, the results can be disastrous. Currently, there are at least 6 different pathotypes that can cause enteric diseases, meaning those that infect our intestines. These interintestinal pathogenic E. coli strains contain virulence factors, or factors that actually help the bacteria infect us better. One such strain is known as E. coli 0157, which is a food contaminant. It contains one of the most powerful toxins, known as Shiga, which actually causes acute renal failure in children. We can become infected by E. coli by drinking contaminated water such as that from a lake, pool, or well. Eating undercooked beef and unpasteurized milk, juice, or cheese can also increase our chances of infection. Eating raw veggies also increases our chances. E. coli is a very contagious disease, so coming into contact with someone or an animal that has the bacteria can also cause us to become infected. E. coli uses a series of proteins to attach itself to the human intestinal epithelial cell. The bacterium latches onto the host cell using protein filaments known as pili, as shown here. Let's take a closer look at what's actually happening. E. coli will use a type 3 secretion system, much like a needle, and inject bacterial proteins into the cell. The green here is one kind of protein that will act as an attachment so that tear molecules can now enter the host cell. Once the tear molecules have entered the host cell, they will go through a process known as tyrosine phosphorylation. The tear molecule will then become modified and enter the host's membrane. What researchers believe is that these receptors will then attach to the membrane, causing the proteins on E. coli to contact these receptors. Now we have officially established contact. Bacteria has become stuck to the cell. Within the cell, the tear molecule will recruit cytoskeletal proteins. Actin monomers will polymerize and eventually cause the bacteria to rise up on the cell. Here we see these yellow dots. They represent the bacterial protein. The important thing to note is that E. coli will inject bacterial proteins into the host cell, which will allow the proteins to become receptors in the host cell's membrane and cause infection. Some of the symptoms of E. coli infection include abdominal pain and cramping. Watery diarrhea will occur within the first few hours of infection. Once the toxin has caused damage to the intestines, bloody stools will begin to show. Dehydration and fatigue are very common as patients are losing a lot of fluids. In the worst case scenario, we'll see the infected suffer from acute renal failure and even death. There is currently no known cure for E. coli 0157 infection as it has to resolve itself. Over-the-counter medications are not recommended as it can slow the digestive process down and undermine the body's ability to eliminate toxins by itself. You may be wondering, am I at risk for an E. coli infection? Well, people who are most at risk for the infection are those who have weakened immune systems. Young children who do not have developed immune systems are also targets for an E. coli infection. Additionally, the elderly are also at a higher risk. Lastly, people with decreased stomach acid are more likely to be infected by E. coli-related diseases. There are about 265,000 cases of E. coli infections each year within the United States. E. coli 0157 will cause about 36% of these infections. While most people recover, 10% of people are at risk for developing hemolytic uremic syndrome, otherwise known as HUS. These individuals are mostly young children and older people. HUS can cause anemia, low platelet count, and kidney failure. Platelets are the blood cells responsible for blood clotting. They can clump together within the small blood vessels of the kidneys, which will result in reduced blood flow or ischemia. This can eventually lead to kidney failure. Decreased platelets also increase the risk of bleeding problems. To prevent infection from intestinal pathogenic E. coli, we can make sure to cook our meat thoroughly and consume pasteurized products. Washing vegetables diligently and making sure that there's no cross-contamination occurring when cooking can also help to reduce the chances of infection. Additionally, keeping good hygiene, such as washing our hands when we're coming out of the restroom, preparing foods, or touching someone else or touching an animal can also help to reduce the chances of becoming infected. Thank you for that educational video. Now you all know the facts about how to prevent infection from E. coli 0157.